I want you to picture an uncertain young man, restless in his ambitions and haunted by a nagging voice in his mind. 10 years ago, that young man was me. I had dreams, grand ones in fact, but my spirit felt scattered, like a leaf caught in every gust of circumstance. If someone criticized me, I stewed in resentment. If someone praised me, I soared too high on that fleeting approval. In truth, I was letting the world's fickle winds dictate my peace. I had no internal anchor, no steadfast set of principles to guide me through life's rough waters. Then, quite by accident, I stumbled across a few lines attributed to Seneca, the Roman Stoic. I still remember the jolt I felt in my chest, reading his words on the tyranny of our own passions and fears. Something in his clarity cut through my confusion, like a hand reaching across millennia to shake me awake. That day, I dived headlong into Stoic philosophy, not casually, but with a hunger for transformation. I read the letters of Seneca, the discourses of Epictetus, and the meditations of Marcus Aurelius, as if my life depended on it. And in a sense it did. I had grown weary of riding an emotional roller coaster, always vulnerable to outside forces. Stoicism offered me a promise of grounding and purpose. Now, welcome to the channel. If you're new here, make sure to like the video and hit that subscribe button. Only 15% of my audience is currently subscribed, so if these insights resonate with you, I'd love for you to join our community and turn on the notification bell to stay updated. The next decade was not a tidy process of becoming a wise sage overnight, far from it. I tumbled and got back up, discovered new corners of my own flaws, and found better ways to handle setbacks. But piece by piece, the lessons of Stoicism seeped into my daily life, changing how I approached relationships, work, success, and even adversity. Looking back now, I can see how different I am from that uncertain young man who placed his fragile self-worth in the hands of chance or public opinion. So, I would like to share with you the 10 life-changing Stoic lessons that emerged from these years of study and practice. They're not theoretical tidbits. They're habits of mind that reshaped my outlook and, I believe, can do the same for you if you embrace them honestly. Let me warn you, Stoicism isn't about swallowing your emotions or turning yourself into a cold statue. It's about recognizing what truly lies within your power and reclaiming dominion over your own mind. It's about harnessing the rational part of your nature to live with greater depth and compassion, not discarding the heart, but tempering it with reason. If you see yourself in that restless young man, if you felt tossed around by life's storms, or consumed by petty squabbles, or starved for a sense of purpose, then I welcome you to this exploration. We'll traverse the key lessons I gleaned, from understanding the boundary between what you can control and what's beyond it, to embracing adversity as fuel for growth, to living in accord with your highest values instead of fleeting whims. Along the way, I'll share stories and insights that hopefully illustrate how Stoicism can be not just a dusty relic of ancient Rome, but a living, breathing philosophy that speaks to us here and now. So come, let's begin by examining where my quest started. The recognition that so many of our agonies and disappointments stem from trying to manage what isn't ours to manage. That single insight was a turning point in my life, a moment of revelation that if I ceased clutching at external outcomes, I could liberate myself from countless frustrations. And once you make that shift, the rest of Stoic teaching unfolds like a grand tapestry, offering guidance on how to be calm under pressure, ethical in daily choices, and open-hearted in a world that sometimes rewards cruelty. By the end of these reflections, my hope is that you'll see how a decade's worth of Stoic practice can crystallize into principles that truly change the way we live. Recognizing what's within our power. I discovered early on that one of the central pillars of Stoicism is distinguishing what we can control from what we cannot. Epictetus phrased it succinctly: some things are in our power, while others are not. It sounds self-evident, yet I spent years butting my head against this basic truth. I obsessed over how others perceived me, how external events shaped my fortunes, how to steer outcomes in my favor. When things went well, I soared. When they went poorly, I crumbled. It was a roller coaster. Only when I started applying the Stoic lens, carefully noting each day which frustrations arose from external dependencies, did I realize how much of my emotional energy was wasted. The moment I saw that countless variables, others' opinions, random chance, market forces, lay beyond my direct influence, I began shifting that energy inward. Instead of fuming that a colleague dismissed my ideas, I focused on polishing my reasoning or finding new ways to communicate. Instead of worrying about a looming economic downturn, I concentrated on honing professional skills and saving responsibly. This reorientation wasn't instantaneous, but over time it granted me a resilience that felt almost magical. Now, make no mistake, the world doesn't stop swirling. People still disappoint, emergencies still arise, criticisms still sting. But the Stoic vantage gave me a new question to ask whenever turmoil flared. Am I upset about something I can truly change, or am I grasping at illusions of control? If it's the former, I can act with purpose. If it's the latter, I can practice letting go. This simple practice, repeated daily, boosted my emotional stability. Where once I'd brood or lash out, I now paused, exhaled, and allowed what was out of my hands to remain out of my hands. It was akin to discovering an off switch for needless stress. Living in harmony with our nature. As the months turned to years, I encountered another Stoic maxim: live in agreement with nature. That statement initially puzzled me. Did it mean hugging trees or rejecting city life? But the Stoics clarified that nature here refers to both the cosmos at large and our rational, social human nature. We are meant to function as part of a grand network, each performing our role ethically and mindfully, not as isolated egos. Realizing this dispelled the old notion that personal gain was paramount. Instead, it guided me to see how each action should ideally benefit, or at least not harm, the broader community. For a while, I wrestled with cynicism. Isn't the world dog eat dog? Won't I be exploited if I care about communal well-being? But as I practiced aligning my choices with the idea that we are social creatures, ironically, I found more authentic connections. I discovered that helping a co-worker, volunteering in local initiatives, or simply showing more patience toward strangers made me feel more rooted in something larger than myself. My relationships deepened because people sensed I wasn't just out for my own advantage. Stoicism here acted as a moral compass, gently directing me to weigh how my decisions affected others. Over time, this sense of shared humanity became second nature. While I remain vigilant about not being naive, I am far from lonely or exploited. I stand in a circle of mutual respect, shaped by the knowledge that we thrive in synergy. Impermanence and embracing the present. A third major revelation was the Stoic emphasis on impermanence. Marcus Aurelius repeatedly reminded himself that everything changes, that life is fleeting, that all we cherish eventually slips away. Early in my journey, that sounded depressing, but the more I reflected, the more I recognized the potential beauty in it. If everything is temporary, each moment can be cherished without clinging. Death, that looming specter, no longer seemed an unwelcome intruder, but a natural boundary that shapes our appreciation for life's gifts. I began traveling with a sense of wonder, noticing small details, a bird's song at dawn, the smile of a loved one, the warmth of sun on my skin, reminding myself these ephemeral experiences wouldn't last. That heightened the gratitude and presence I felt. I no longer wanted to bury my attention in regrets of the past or anxieties for the future. Stoicism taught me that the present moment is the only point where I actually exercise control. By savoring it fully, I defy the illusions that perpetually postpone happiness. And when good things inevitably ended, as all must, I found myself more prepared to let them go gracefully. Of course, I still occasionally mourn losses deeply. Stoics are not unfeeling, but I sense less shock or protest because I accept that transience is part of nature's design. Adversity as an opportunity. A fourth lesson: adversity is not purely an evil. It can be a forge that tempers our character. Seneca compared challenging situations to the training ground of an athlete. We grow strong by wrestling with difficulties. Previously, I avoided hardships, seeing them as roadblocks to happiness. But Stoic practice reframed them. For instance, when I faced a career setback, a project failure that stung my pride, I forced myself to see it as a test of resilience. Instead of wallowing in self-pity, I dissected what went wrong, owned my share of fault, and set out to improve. This approach, repeated across multiple adversities, slowly built my confidence that I could weather storms. I understood that real confidence doesn't stem from always winning, but from learning how to respond constructively when you lose. Mind you, this stance doesn't glamorize suffering. It merely acknowledges that some hardships cannot be avoided, so we might as well glean wisdom from them. Over 10 years, I've learned to greet difficulties with something akin to Stoic curiosity. What virtue can I practice here? Patience, courage, creativity, or empathy? Doing so shifts me from victimhood to an active agent, reminding me that while I can't always choose my circumstances, I can choose my response. Over time, such consistent practice yields a sense of calm, even in crisis, because you realize that your capacity to adapt and grow is more powerful than any single setback. Reframing events through our judgments. The fifth major lesson concerns how we label events. Stoicism insists that events themselves are neutral. Our judgments about them color them as good or bad. This might seem like a mental trick, but implementing it daily changed my emotional landscape. If someone cut me off in traffic, the old me might have been incensed, labeling it a personal affront. Now, I typically step back. They made a sudden lane change. Maybe they're rushing to an emergency. My labeling it as an insult is optional. With that shift, the anger deflates. Repeated thousands of times over a decade, this skill to reframe or question my initial label transformed me from a reactive ball of stress into someone more fluid. Admittedly, it isn't always easy. In deeply emotional situations, like betrayal by a close friend, my initial labeling might be, "This is a horrible injustice," but Stoic reflection prompts me to ask, is it objectively horrible, or is it a natural result of their character and choices, which were never under my control? The sting remains, but it's moderated by the recognition that I can't control their loyalty, only my reaction. Over time, the habit of re-examining events before cementing them as disastrous saves enormous emotional turmoil. Cultivating a sense of community. Sixth, I learned that Stoic practice is not about isolation. We often see Stoic figures depicted as lone individuals, but Marcus Aurelius spoke volumes on working cooperatively, showing kindness, and fulfilling our roles within society. My growth in this area was gradual. I used to assume that emotional independence meant minimal reliance on others. But Stoicism, when read thoroughly, underscores that humans are inherently social, designed to support one another. By helping those around us, we act in accordance with our nature. Over the last decade, I shifted from a more self-centered approach to one where I try to be of service, at work, in my neighborhood, among my friends. This does not mean martyring myself. It means recognizing that building strong communal ties aligns with reason and virtue. Stoicism taught me that being helpful can be an expression of living well. If I withhold my abilities out of indifference, I miss the chance to exercise justice and benevolence. And ironically, giving fosters reciprocal respect. People trust you more, and you form bonds that can sustain you when adversity hits. While I do not help others merely for personal advantage, it often proves beneficial for everyone involved, reflecting the Stoic idea that virtue is naturally rewarding. Letting go of external approval. A seventh crucial realization was that external applause or criticism should not define my sense of self. This was possibly the hardest for me to internalize because I'd lived so much of my life chasing praise. Stoicism, however, consistently reminds us that people's opinions are fickle and beyond our control. If we tether our self-worth to them, we live on a seesaw, rising when praised, crashing when criticized. The Stoic path is to anchor your worth in living according to virtue. Did you act with integrity, fairness, and reason? If yes, that is your success, regardless of applause or sneers. Practicing this in real life felt daunting at first. In a work context, if my boss wasn't impressed, I fretted. But as I embraced Stoic thought, I'd deliver my best effort with the pure intention of excellence and fairness, then let go. If the boss praised me, fine. If not, I used the feedback for improvement or recognized if it was baseless. This approach protected me from undue anxiety. Socially, it freed me from pandering. I no longer tailored my opinions to fit the crowd. I might adapt my language for diplomacy, but I stood by my convictions calmly. Over time, ironically, people often respected me more for that solidity. Even if they disagreed, they sensed I wasn't a puppet seeking validation. My self-confidence began to blossom in a stable, unwavering way. A self-compassion in the face of imperfection. The eighth major lesson is the balance between strict moral standards and gentle compassion toward ourselves. Stoicism demands we strive for virtue, but it doesn't mean self-flagellation whenever we fall short. Indeed, Epictetus suggested we observe our lapses like a physician diagnosing a patient, calmly aiming to remedy them. Early in my Stoic path, I'd sometimes be harsh on myself, thinking, if I were truly Stoic, I wouldn't have lost my temper. I'm a failure. Over time, I realized that punishing myself psychologically only made it harder to progress. Far better to acknowledge the lapse, reflect on triggers, plan a better reaction next time, and move on. This self-compassion ironically fosters more consistent improvement. If you treat every slip as catastrophic, you might lose heart. But if you see it as part of a learning curve, you stand back up. People around me also noticed that as I extended self-kindness, I became kinder to them. Judging myself less harshly made me less judgmental of others. We're all navigating life's complexities with incomplete knowledge. Recognizing that fosters a Stoic humility that allows for empathy. Daily reflection as a ritual. Ninth, I discovered the potency of daily reflection as a ritual, be it journaling or a quiet mental recap at night. This habit not only cements the Stoic lessons, but also tracks how I apply them in the mundane details of life. Each evening, I'd briefly note, where did I let external events rattle me? did I remain mindful of my power to choose my reaction. On days I succeeded, I felt a quiet satisfaction. On days I stumbled, I made a plan for improvement. Over the years, this consistent practice molded my Stoic reflexes. It's akin to a gentle but relentless form of self-education. Without daily reflection, these lessons might remain abstract ideals, quickly forgotten in the swirl of everyday life. But by integrating them into a nightly routine, I anchored them in reality, ensuring that each day built upon the last. This continuity over a decade yielded subtle but profound shifts in how I respond to crises, handle relationships, and pursue goals. But moral excellence over comfort. Lastly, though not least, the 10th lesson that proved life-changing was recognizing that moral excellence holds priority over personal comfort. Time and again, Stoic writings emphasize that we should prefer moral adversity to comfortable wrongdoing. At first, this can clash with our natural inclination to seek an easy path, but adopting it in countless small decisions, like refusing to lie for convenience, turning down unethical requests at work, or confronting a friend's harmful behavior gently, gave me a lasting sense of integrity. I might lose out on immediate perks, but I maintain a clear conscience, which is worth far more than fleeting gains. Over the decade, I realized that my inner serenity relies on not betraying what I know is right. This principle acts like a compass. Whenever I find myself at a moral crossroads, I recall that short-term discomfort is better than long-term self-betrayal. The result is a life that feels coherent, not riddled with regrets or rationalizations. I can rest at night with minimal internal conflict. As you can see, each of these 10 lessons, embracing the boundary between controllable and uncontrollable, living in harmony with social nature, accepting impermanence, seeing adversity as fuel, reframing events through Stoic judgments, fostering genuine community bonds, letting go of external approval, practicing self-compassion, maintaining a daily reflection habit, and valuing moral excellence over comfort, came gradually to me across a decade of trial, reflection, and refinement. None is a quick fix. Rather, they are like seeds that need watering and sunlight in the daily soil of real life. Over time, they sprout into stable habits of mind and heart. If I had known at the start what I do now, I might have navigated some storms more smoothly. But in truth, perhaps the slow journey was necessary. Stoicism, after all, is not about instant enlightenment, but about consistent, honest engagement with our own flaws and potentials. My hope in sharing these lessons is that you might find a shorter path to your own Stoic grounding, learning from my experiences, my missteps, my small triumphs. If anything resonates with you, test it in your world, your relationships, your workplace, your personal quests. Stoicism only proves itself in the laboratory of life. Through these reflections, I've found a more resilient, less anxious way of being. I still stumble, of course I do, but the difference is that now I have a framework to recover quickly. I do not blame fate or external events. I adjust my perspective, practice my virtue, and carry on. If you choose to incorporate these Stoic lessons, you might likewise find a deeper sense of confidence, clarity, and compassion arising in your day-to-day experiences. That, to me, is the real gift of Stoicism, and it has taken me 10 years to fully appreciate. May it accompany you on your own path, guiding you gently toward a more purposeful, stable, and richly human existence. You see, for most of us, philosophy remains an abstract notion until it's tested against everyday friction, conflicts at work, family disagreements, financial strains, or those subtle pangs of envy and insecurity that we may never voice out loud. Over a decade, I learned again and again that Stoicism comes alive precisely in these mundane trenches, where theory meets the grit of reality. In sharing how I integrated these lessons into everyday contexts, I hope to show you the living spirit of Stoicism, a practical ally that doesn't belong to dusty academic volumes, but to real men and women seeking steadiness and insight amid the swirl of life. Stoicism in relationships, family and friendships. Let's begin with the realm of personal bonds, family ties, friendships, romantic connections. I discovered that while Stoicism is often caricatured as emotionless, it actually enriches relationships by guiding us away from destructive patterns and illusions. Let me be concrete. In my earlier years, I took disagreements or criticisms from family members as personal attacks. If my brother questioned my choices, I reacted defensively, determined to win the argument. Over time, Stoicism taught me to pause and reflect on the boundary between what I can and cannot control. Could I control my brother's viewpoint or emotional stance? So, rather than fueling the tension, I learned to calmly evaluate if there was any truth in his remarks. If so, I acknowledged it. If not, I let it be. This shift diffused countless potential blow-ups and ironically made family gatherings far more harmonious. Moreover, living in accord with nature means respecting the fundamental social nature of humans. My inclination to isolate when offended softened as I realized how essential communal bonds are. If my father or a close friend inadvertently hurt me, I approached them not with reactivity, but with a stoic curiosity about their perspective. Could there have been a misunderstanding? Did they have their own stressors leading to a careless remark? Instead of jumping to label them as unfair, I tried seeing them as fellow flawed travelers, each grappling with their own burdens. This mental reframe often revealed that small conflicts or harsh words were more about their internal struggles than a deliberate slight. By meeting them with patience, I gave them space to open up, sometimes apologizing or explaining themselves. The net result was stronger trust and fewer lingering resentments. In romantic relationships, Stoicism became a stabilizing force. Early on, I had a habit of seeking constant validation from my partner, a subtle clinginess that arose from my fear of losing them or not being enough. Stoicism confronted me with the realization that I cannot own another's affection. All I control is how I show up, how I communicate, how I treat them with care. If they choose to stay or leave, that is their domain. This perspective did not make me apathetic. Rather, it dissolved the frantic anxiety that can choke a relationship. I was able to love more freely because I was no longer weighed down by the terror of potential loss. Instead of fixating on, will they love me tomorrow, I invested in being a partner aligned with virtue, honest, empathetic, respectful, day by day. Paradoxically, that steadiness fosters deeper intimacy. My partner felt safer because I wasn't gripped by insecure demands. I gave her emotional breathing room, and we formed a connection built on mutual respect rather than codependence. Tackling work and career through Stoic eyes. From the personal sphere, let's shift to the domain of work and career, an area where stress and politics often reign. Over the decade, I saw how Stoicism offered a golden framework to navigate professional dynamics without losing one's sanity or moral compass. When conflicts arose, be it a teammate who kept undercutting me or a boss who seemed capricious, I learned to revisit the Stoic principle of controlling my own judgments and actions. I recognized I couldn't force my colleague to be fair, but I could remain professional, calmly address factual errors, and refuse to engage in petty retaliation. If the environment became irreparably toxic, Stoicism reminded me I could choose to leave. After all, preserving my character supersedes clinging to a job. That clarity prevented me from sinking into bitterness or feeling helpless. I either addressed the issue diplomatically if it was solvable, or I accepted the situation as is and planned an exit if needed. This perspective replaced my old habit of complaining endlessly without taking decisive steps. Stoicism also reshaped my goal setting. Instead of solely chasing promotions or salary raises, which lie partly in others' hands, I focused on aspects of my performance firmly in my control: the quality of my work, my reliability, my capacity to mentor younger hires. I set internal goals, like improving a specific skill, finishing tasks to the best of my ability, or upholding ethical standards under pressure, and let external recognition come if it might. Ironically, managers took notice of my steady diligence, and I advanced. But that advancement no longer felt like the main event. Rather, it was a side effect of the real triumph, staying true to Stoic ideals of excellence and integrity in daily tasks. This shift from external metrics to internal growth freed me from the roller coaster of corporate politics. Even if a promotion was delayed or a project overshadowed by office favoritism, I felt at peace, knowing I gave my best. My satisfaction came from my alignment with Stoic virtue, not from ephemeral corporate accolades. Then there's the matter of workplace gossip or drama. Before discovering Stoicism, I might have been drawn into back-channel complaints or judgments about colleagues. Yet Stoic writings, especially from Marcus Aurelius, hammered home the futility and harm of idle chatter. We do ourselves a disservice when we degrade others behind their backs. Over time, I distanced myself from gossip circles. Politely, I'd steer conversations back to constructive topics or remain silent if negativity swirled. This conscious effort preserved my mental clarity and earned me a reputation for fairness. People realized I was not one to badmouth others for personal gain. As a result, even those who disagreed with me came to respect my consistency. And personally, I noticed a calmer mind, less entangled in petty rivalries, more focused on actual problem solving. Stoicism fosters a respectful professionalism that quietly stands out amid the usual corporate chaos. The Stoic way of handling money and material wealth. Let us speak next about finances. Over these 10 years, I observed how anxious I was about money, afraid of scarcity, envious of those with more. Stoicism's counsel on indifference, things neither inherently good nor evil, like wealth, helped me see that money is a tool, not a measure of my worth. That perspective alone eased the stress. I began to plan my finances responsibly, saving and investing prudently, but without letting the size of my bank account define my self-esteem. If fortunes rose, I remained grounded, recalling that external fortunes are fleeting. If they dipped, I viewed it as an opportunity to practice resilience. Rather than idolizing wealth, I tried aligning financial decisions with virtue. If an investment felt ethically dubious, no matter the potential profit, I steered clear. If I had surplus, I considered donating or lending to friends in need, but with the Stoic understanding that I should not tie my emotional well-being to whether they repay me promptly or praise me. By disentangling money from ego, I found a healthier relationship with it. I neither despise wealth nor worship it. I see it as a means to support what truly matters: family, community, personal growth. That shift took years, but it liberated me from the feast or famine mindset and the craving to prove something through material accumulation. As I often reflect, if the cosmos is vast and we're but a speck, how foolish to let a few digits on a screen become the axis of my emotional stability. Daily obstacles, a Stoic toolkit. I'd now like to share some more day-to-day scenarios that highlight how I apply Stoicism in practice, a kind of toolkit that might resonate with you, showing how these philosophical concepts meet real life's gritty details. Minor annoyances, traffic jams, long lines, slow internet, these trifles used to ignite frustration in me. Stoic reflection taught me to label them as neutral events. The jam is merely a situation in which many cars are on the road at once. My anger doesn't expedite traffic, so I breathe, remind myself that I can use the wait productively, listen to an audiobook, think through a problem, or practice quiet observation. This approach transforms a potential stressor into a pocket of calm or learning. Over time, training myself to remain unruffled by small delays expanded my ability to keep perspective on bigger challenges. Dealing with rude people. If someone snaps at me in a store or a neighbor gossips behind my back, the Stoic question arises: do I control their rudeness? Can I choose my response? Absolutely. Instead of reciprocating hostility, I maintain civility, sometimes offering a neutral or even kind remark. This doesn't mean I become a doormat. If the offense is severe, I might calmly assert a boundary. But I refuse to let their negativity colonize my mood or force me into reactive anger. This stance often diffuses tension, and even if it doesn't, I remain master of myself. Time management and overcommitment. Another area of Stoic relevance is learning to say no when obligations threaten to overwhelm my capacity to fulfill them well. Before Stoicism, I feared disappointing people, so I'd overcommit and then stress myself out. By clarifying that my top priority is acting with excellence in the tasks I accept, I realized that spreading myself too thin leads to mediocrity and frustration. So I practice a Stoic economy of time. I accept only what I can handle without compromising the quality of my presence or work. If pressed for more, I politely decline, explaining that I'd prefer to do fewer tasks well than many tasks poorly. This fosters respect in others, even if they initially push for more. It also guards me from burnout, ensuring that I have mental space for reflection and genuine engagement in what I do undertake. Physical health challenges. Stoicism has also guided me through health uncertainties, illness, injuries, the natural aging of one's body. The Stoics remind us that while we can care for our health, ultimate control over bodily outcomes is limited. Diseases or accidents can strike. By bracing for that reality, I found I could face medical issues with greater poise. If I got sick, I applied the Stoic approach of calmly following the best treatments and focusing on the aspects I can control. My attitude, adherence to doctor's advice, diet, rest. I let go of the rest. This mindset turned fear into acceptance, and acceptance into a form of inner peace. I recall once during a health scare, someone asked why I wasn't more panicked. I replied that I was diligent about the steps I could take, so why waste energy on dread about outcomes I couldn't guarantee? That perspective, gleaned from Stoic texts, spared me a great deal of emotional torment. Now some exciting news. Our channel now offers a members club. By joining it, you'll unlock exclusive benefits, deeper content dives, and personal insights. Join us on this journey, and let's build a meaningful life together. And I also humbly ask you to leave a comment, as it helps my channel immensely. If you do not know what to comment, just write "better every day" so I know you reached this far. And don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. Also, I've linked some books on Stoicism that helped me become the man I am today, and will also help you achieve a Stoic mindset. Misconceptions about Stoicism, emotion versus reason. Along this journey, I realized many people misunderstand Stoicism. They assume it demands we stifle emotions, become unfeeling robots. But in my experience, Stoic practice refines emotions rather than destroying them. I still feel love, sadness, joy, anger, just less enslaved by them. When sadness surfaces, say over a personal loss, I allow it. I do not label it a weakness. Stoicism teaches that mourning a loved one is natural, but that we shouldn't rail against fate or let grief consume our entire existence. We honor the sorrow without letting it degrade into despair. This balanced approach stands in stark contrast to the caricature of Stoics as stone-faced Stoic stereotypes. Similarly, when I feel happiness, like celebrating a friend's achievement, I fully embrace it, knowing that all pleasant moments are ephemeral. By not clinging to them, I paradoxically deepen my appreciation while they last. Stoicism also encourages compassion, recognizing that everyone wrestles with their own illusions and pains. When someone acts out of line, it often stems from confusion or inner turmoil. I try to approach them with empathy. That doesn't mean I excuse harmful acts, but I see them less as monsters and more as misguided humans who have yet to align with rational virtue. This stance fosters understanding rather than perpetual enmity. Rituals that embody. Stoic living over 10 years, I also developed a few personal rituals that anchor me in Stoic principles. 1. Morning pause. Upon waking, I briefly affirm, today I may encounter rudeness, chaos, and misunderstandings. Such is the nature of life. My job is to respond with wisdom, patience, and integrity. I cannot control others, only myself. This sets a calm expectation for the day. Second, nightly inventory. We touched on this earlier. A short reflection or journaling session, reviewing where I kept my Stoic poise and where I faltered. I correct course for tomorrow. This process keeps me attuned to small improvements, day by day, rather than letting weeks pass without mindful reflection. Third, periodic silence. Every few weeks I plan a day, or even a few hours of minimal speech and digital disconnection. This mini-retreat fosters mental clarity, reminiscent of Seneca's advice to practice voluntary discomfort or Epictetus's counsel to master one's will. By stepping away from constant stimulation, I rediscover the stillness inside that busy routines can obscure. It's a time to contemplate, realign, and sense what truly matters. 4. Negative visualization. An ancient Stoic technique. Negative visualization involves imagining the loss of something I value, my health, a cherished relationship, my possessions, but not to depress myself. Rather, it sharpens gratitude for what I still have, reminding me never to take it for granted. Done periodically, it banishes complacency. If I visualize in healthy measure a scenario where I lose my ability to walk, I return to the present with renewed appreciation for my legs. This technique has profoundly enriched my perspective, preventing me from gliding through life half asleep to blessings that exist right now. Handling criticism and praise. Another aspect I learned to handle more gracefully is the cycle of criticism and praise. Typically, we alternate between craving acclaim and dreading condemnation. Stoicism taught me to maintain equilibrium in both scenarios. If someone compliments me lavishly, I accept it politely, but remind myself that compliments are ephemeral and subjective. I don't let them inflate my ego or alter my sense of identity. Conversely, if someone condemns me, I examine whether there's any truth in their words. If yes, I correct my behavior. If no, I let the criticism pass, aware that their viewpoint might stem from incomplete knowledge or personal biases. In either case, praise or blame, I strive to remain anchored in the question, am I acting in line with virtue? This fosters a steady humility. Over the long run, people might be puzzled why I don't get too excited when they laud me or too downhearted when they critique me. That neutrality, ironically, can lend you a quiet aura of confidence. They see that you're not swayed by fickle judgments, which can earn deeper respect than if you continually fish for validation. Revisiting the lessons after a decade. Periodically, I reread the works of Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius to see how my understanding has evolved. Each time, new nuances leap out. For instance, lines I once skimmed over may now ring with clarity because my real-life experiences have primed me to grasp them. There's an iterative quality to Stoic learning. You cycle back to the texts, apply them further, face new trials, and read them again with fresh eyes. The Stoics themselves advocated for lifelong learning. I can attest that what I gleaned in year 1 deepened by year 5, and now at year 10, I see the lessons weaving together more holistically. If you find yourself drawn to Stoicism, consider building a cyclical reading habit. Each pass yields deeper layers. Pair that reading with real-life challenges, and you'll watch your Stoic muscles grow. Addressing concerns about joy and spontaneity. Some worry that living stoically means forfeiting spontaneity or joy. They imagine a schedule of constant self-checks, leaving no room for delight. In truth, Stoic practice can increase your capacity for spontaneous enjoyment. Because you're free from anxious overthinking or from chasing illusions, you can partake in pleasurable activities, like a spontaneous road trip or an impromptu gathering with friends, without burdening them with unrealistic expectations. You can enjoy the moment for what it is. For me, Stoic alignment means I feel more open to embracing fun when it arises, because I'm not haunted by regrets of the past or frantic about the future. When a friend calls me for a last-minute hike, I can calmly decide if it aligns with my commitments. If yes, I go wholeheartedly, reveling in nature's splendor without guilt or anxiety. That's a far cry from the earlier me, who might have agonized over whether I should be working instead, or worried about how I'd look if I declined. Now, each yes or no flows from a sense of rational balance, preserving both my responsibilities and my enjoyment. Legacy and mortality, finding meaning. Entering the second decade of Stoic exploration, I often reflect on the concept of legacy. Marcus Aurelius frequently reminded himself how posterity forgets even the greatest emperors, that time swallows all. At first, that can sound grim, but I came to see it as liberating. Since we can't guarantee immortality through fame, our best bet is to use each day to live with moral sincerity. That might be a quiet legacy, raising children well, treating neighbors kindly, leaving some trace of goodness in your corner of the world. Stoicism thus orients you away from hollow achievements aimed at impressing future generations. Instead, you find meaning in your present sphere, acting with care and reason here and now. If it echoes beyond your lifespan, that's a bonus, but not your obsession. Or maybe you'll try negative visualization for a few minutes, imagining life without a taken-for-granted blessing, thus renewing your gratitude. Maybe you'll choose to respond calmly to a provoking situation, remembering that adversity can train your character. Each small step is a living expression of Stoic learning, far more potent than memorizing philosophical quotes. If you find it resonates, keep experimenting, keep refining. Over time, you too may look back on a span of years amazed at how far Stoic discipline has carried you. Let me end by reiterating a central idea. Stoicism is not a cold, joyless creed. It's a gateway to genuine satisfaction, anchored in reality rather than illusion. By focusing on virtue, rational choice, communal well-being, and acceptance of fate's flow, we tap into a core serenity that endures even when life's waves pound the shore. My decade-long journey confirms that these teachings hold real power in daily life, power to diffuse anger, quell anxiety, sharpen purpose, and deepen empathy. They do not guarantee a life free of problems, but guide us to confront those problems from a place of inner composure and moral clarity. And that, in a world brimming with chaos and trivial distractions, is truly life-changing. Let us revisit a crucial theme: self-worth. During my early years with Stoicism, I repeatedly encountered the idea that we must anchor our sense of value not in external accolades or possessions, but in the consistent practice of virtue. This concept remained largely intellectual until various life experiences pressed it into my bones. For instance, I recall a period when I lost a prestigious role at work, something I had identified with strongly. The blow to my pride was immediate. My initial reaction was to question my competence, to spiral into shame. Yet the Stoic voice in me whispered, "Has your character changed? Are you no longer able to reason, to act ethically, to show kindness? Then your worth endures." That reflection led me to reframe the job loss as a separate event, external to my moral being. I might have performed well or poorly, but the outcome also depended on factors beyond my control: organizational shifts, budget cuts, changes in leadership priorities. By detaching my self-worth from that outcome, I found an unexpected freedom. Instead of wallowing, I pivoted to learning new skills, offering mentorship to former colleagues, and searching for opportunities aligned with my Stoic values. In time, a better role emerged, a role I might have overlooked had I remained fixated on the idea that my identity was tied to the old position. This transformation illustrated with living force the Stoic lesson that our dignity rests in how we comport ourselves, not in ephemeral achievements. Emotional nuance is another dimension I'd like to explore: how Stoicism guided me through the labyrinth of more subtle feelings: longing, regret, embarrassment, or even romantic infatuation. We often see Stoicism portrayed as a shield against all emotion, but in my experience, it functioned more like a compass, pointing me toward reason whenever emotion threatened to blow me off course. Let's take regret as an example. I used to be haunted by choices I made years ago, opportunities I didn't seize, words left unsaid. My mind would replay these scenarios with a relentless "what if?", a mild obsession that sapped my present vitality. Stoicism teaches that regret for past events is fruitless if we can no longer alter them. Instead, it urges us to extract the lesson and apply it moving forward. So I adopted a practical routine. Whenever regret surfaced, I would identify a single principle or action I should adopt from that old mistake. Say, learning to speak up sooner in critical discussions. Then I'd consciously reaffirm, I cannot change the past, but I own the present. That mental pivot, practiced repeatedly, diluted regret's power. Over weeks and months, my mind gained a kind of forward-facing poise. The regret no longer chained me to a static sense of loss. It pushed me to refine how I handle current opportunities. I found this approach preserved the kernel of wisdom from regret while discarding the emotional baggage. Romantic infatuation presented its own challenge. In my younger days, I might be swept into intense, idealized admiration for someone, reading cosmic significance into every interaction. Stoicism reminded me to keep a balanced view. Attraction is natural, but to place one's emotional equilibrium entirely in the hands of another's attention, that is a recipe for misery. Through reflective practice, I learned to see attraction as a spark that might or might not develop into a real partnership. Meanwhile, I retained my center. If the attraction blossomed into mutual respect and shared virtue, wonderful. If it fizzled or turned out to be one-sided, I accepted it without letting rejection bruise my sense of self. Embracing mortality also clarifies priorities. I realized that many anxieties about climbing a corporate ladder or accumulating certain luxuries pale next to the reality that life is finite. This prompts me to ask, is this what I truly want to devote my limited time to? More often, I'm drawn to nurturing relationships, contributing to community, pursuing knowledge, and honing a calm but adventurous spirit. Such stoic mindfulness can lead to downsizing possessions or refining how I spend money, focusing more on experiences or philanthropic endeavors. People might question why I'm not fixated on the next big house or car. But from a Stoic vantage, none of that lingers beyond my final breath. Virtue, kindness, the impacts on people around me, those intangible footprints matter more. This shift from material obsession to moral emphasis has brought a peace I never found in acquiring stuff. Stoicism and hope. A final note. There's a notion that Stoics discard hope, seeing it as an external longing. Actually, what Stoicism discards is idle hope or expectation that circumstances must unfold a certain way. But a Stoic can still harbor a form of active hope, a vision of a better future that we strive for through our efforts, without clinging to the guarantee of success. We do not passively wait for miracles. We do what is in our power to create conditions favorable to progress. If the world meets us halfway, wonderful. If not, we adapt. This pragmatic hope aligns well with Stoic realism. For example, I hope my work improves people's lives, but I do not stake my emotional equilibrium on universal acclaim. I do my part, trusting that rational action can spark beneficial change. If success arrives, I accept it humbly. If not, I remain unbroken, for my sense of meaning comes from living the Stoic principles themselves. Thus, over 10 years, I've not become a cynic, nor have I become a naive dreamer. I've become what I'd call a hopeful realist, one who invests effort in constructive aims while acknowledging that fate might intervene. This posture fosters perseverance and flexibility. I don't quit at the first sign of obstacle, nor do I become bitter if my plans are thwarted. I pivot, reassessing what remains in my control, continuing the Stoic path. That persistence in the long run can yield remarkable achievements or transformations. But even if it doesn't, the Stoic vantage upholds serenity. You don't pin your dignity on worldly triumphs. Looking ahead, the ongoing Stoic journey. In closing this second installment, let me underline that the Stoic lessons we summarized in Part 1 and now explored in real-life scenarios form an evolving discipline. 10 years gave me a solid grounding, but the path extends forward. Each new chapter of life, aging parents, changing societal challenges, global crises, tests and refines these Stoic roots. This philosophy does not promise a final arrival at perfect tranquility. It promises a method to keep realigning with reason, virtue, and compassion, no matter how chaotic the environment grows. The older I get, the more I respect Stoicism's adaptability. It doesn't lock you into rigid dogma. It invites you to handle each situation with practical wisdom, informed by a few steadfast principles about what truly matters. I also find that sharing Stoic insights with others, as I'm doing now, both tests and reinforces my grasp of them. If I can communicate them in plain language, it suggests I've internalized them enough to speak from the heart. And if I see confusion or pushback from listeners, it prompts me to re-examine any gaps in my own understanding. In that sense, Stoicism thrives on dialogue. The ancient Stoics engaged in discourse in the markets, the imperial court, or the workshop. We can do the same in modern contexts, podcasts, friend groups, community gatherings. The goal is not to preach, but to illuminate how these ideas might free people from self-imposed burdens. Going forward, I plan to integrate these Stoic practices even more seamlessly, continuing daily reflection, applying the virtue lens to bigger decisions, and encouraging my close circle, family, mentees, colleagues, to consider Stoic perspectives on adversity and contentment. Not everyone will label it Stoicism, nor need they. They might just see it as common sense, anchored in timeless wisdom. If it helps them find steadiness in a tumultuous world, that's enough. Stoicism's ultimate legacy, for me, is a quiet presence of mind that navigates shifting sands with grace. As you, dear listener or reader, absorb these reflections, my sincere wish is that you take at least one Stoic principle and apply it within the next day or week. Perhaps it's the notion of separating what's in your control from what isn't. This stance permitted me to love more freely, ironically, because I wasn't weighed down by the dread of heartbreak. Love, in Stoic terms, becomes an active choice rather than a desperate entanglement. That shift yielded richer relationships, built on mutual acknowledgement that we are each responsible for our own minds, never the owners of another's affections. Let me next speak about leadership, whether in community, workplace, or family contexts. Over the decade, I often found myself in positions, sometimes official, sometimes informal, where people looked to me for direction or conflict resolution. Stoicism equipped me with a framework for leadership that emphasizes service, rational decision-making, and emotional steadiness. A Stoic leader, I learned, doesn't bark orders out of ego, but rather sets an example in how to handle setbacks or conflicts with composure. If a team member underperforms, you address it calmly, focusing on solutions, not blame. If a crisis arises, you check your own fear, recognizing you can't always halt the crisis, but can guide how the group responds. Crucially, Stoic leadership also involves recognizing that your team's opinions of you, while relevant, are not your ultimate yardstick. You strive to be fair and transparent. Some may still resent you or doubt you. Fine, you cannot coerce universal approval. Instead, you remain consistent in your virtue, letting your actions speak. Over time, that steadiness often garners genuine respect, far more durable than the fleeting compliance extracted by fear or manipulation. I came to see that when subordinates realize you act from principle rather than favoritism or whim, they trust you. They may not always agree with your decisions, but they're less likely to attribute them to personal caprice. This fosters a culture of reliability and mutual regard. Now, a topic I rarely see associated with Stoicism, creativity. Some suspect Stoicism, by emphasizing rationality, might stifle imagination. My lived experience says otherwise. Freed from the churn of emotional reactivity and from the obsession with external validation, I found greater mental bandwidth for creative thinking. For instance, once I was not locked in resentment or worry, my mind had more space to wander, to play with ideas. That's how new solutions to problems sprang up, sometimes in unexpected aha moments. Writers like Seneca occasionally touch on the synergy between a tranquil mind and productive thought. Indeed, the Stoic mind, unburdened by petty drama, can roam more freely among possibilities. In my personal creative endeavors, writing, conceptual design, brainstorming new processes at work, this Stoic calm often nurtured a better flow. Because I no longer had to prove my brilliance, I experimented without the paralyzing fear of failure. If an idea bombed, that was just feedback, not a blow to my identity. Consequently, I took more creative risks, discovered novel approaches, and engaged more boldly with challenges. In short, Stoicism didn't shrink my creative horizons. It expanded them by removing ego-based constraints and anxiety. That revelation was among the more surprising gifts of this journey, reinforcing that Stoicism is a living philosophy for all spheres of life, not just moral or emotional crises. A question often raised is, does Stoicism ban ambition? The short answer is no, but it transforms ambition from a restless hunger for achievement into a focused pursuit of excellence aligned with virtue. In my earlier days, ambition meant chasing titles or accolades. After internalizing Stoicism, I retooled my ambitions to revolve around self-improvement, community contribution, and mastery of crafts I find meaningful. For instance, I set goals to refine certain skills or to help a certain number of people in my community, but not to outshine others or secure a superficial status. The tension in my heart eased. I still worked diligently, but now the motive was more intrinsic, finding satisfaction in the doing rather than craving applause. Ironically, I often found success with less internal friction because I wasn't weighed down by fear of falling short. Stoicism, thus, doesn't kill ambition. It purifies it, rooting it in a stable foundation that outlasts external shifts. Let's spend a moment on handling public scrutiny. As you ascend in a career or become more visible, critics and observers multiply. Stoicism underscores that your moral responsibility is to act with integrity, not to placate every critic. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that detractors may misunderstand him or judge him unfairly. The Stoic response is not to resent them, but to remain steadfast in your best reasoning and virtue. If their criticism holds truth, you correct yourself. If not, you let it pass. Over a decade, I gradually stopped fretting about gossip or social media jabs, focusing instead on delivering tangible value or leading responsibly. This shift let me invest energy in constructive work rather than in self-defense. The serenity gained in not chasing every rumor or comment is immense. Indeed, the Stoic principle that it's not things that upset us, but our opinions about things extends beautifully to opinions others hold about us. If we cannot change them rationally by clear demonstration or calm dialogue, better to let them remain. Another subtle point, Stoicism and humor. People sometimes think Stoics must be humorless. I found the opposite to be true. Once you stop taking every slight or mishap so gravely, a gentle sense of humor often emerges. You see life's oddities, the ironies in human behavior, and can laugh kindly without malice. This laughter is not forced cheeriness. It's a spontaneous release that arises from recognizing the cosmic perspective. Humans fuss over so many trivialities, ourselves included, and it's okay to find a little amusement in our shared foibles. So yes, you can crack jokes, appreciate comedic moments, and still be stoic, as long as you remain respectful and mindful. In fact, this lightness can diffuse tension in group settings, bridging stoic calm with a congenial atmosphere. Let me also speak about failures. We touched on adversity, but personal failures, projects that tank, miscalculations that cost money, relationships we sabotage inadvertently, these weigh heavily on many. For me, Stoic doctrine about control and acceptance was invaluable. If I messed up due to my oversight, I took responsibility without wallowing. I'd analyze how to prevent a repeat. I'd separate ephemeral embarrassment from the real lesson. And I'd keep in mind that no single failure erases my potential for virtue. The real question is whether I face my mistakes bravely, correct course, and move forward. Over 10 years, some of my biggest leaps in skill or wisdom stemmed from Stoic reflection after a painful failure. I came to see failure not as a final verdict on my worth, but as a pivot point. Ironically, letting go of the ego that dreads failure fosters a bolder approach to life. That's how Stoic acceptance can breed audacity. You realize that even if you fail publicly, your core self remains intact, so why not dare? A key practice that undergirded all these applications was the periodic mental exercise known as negative visualization, which we briefly touched on. Revisiting it, once or twice a week, I'd sit quietly and imagine losing something precious, a friend's companionship, my physical mobility, even my possessions. Not to depress myself, but to awaken deeper gratitude. Post-exercise, I found myself cherishing my friend's next phone call more, savoring a simple walk outside, appreciating my current resources. This posture of appreciation prevented the creeping sense of entitlement or boredom that can seep into daily life. Instead of taking them for granted, I recognized them as fragile blessings. Over the years, this Stoic mental habit inoculated me against complacency. When real loss eventually struck, like the passing of a beloved mentor, I was more emotionally prepared, having rehearsed the inevitability of such losses in my Stoic reflections. The grief was still there, but not accompanied by existential shock or denial. Additionally, the dynamic of self-awareness gained momentum in my Stoic journey. Each day, I tried to maintain a gentle internal watchfulness, noticing my emotional swings, the roots of impatience, or my cravings for validation. This introspective stance, reminiscent of the Stoic practice of introspection, helps catch negative impulses before they blossom into full-blown actions. Perhaps I'd sense an emerging resentment if I felt overshadowed at a meeting. Recognizing it early, I'd ask, why do I resent this? Am I letting envy or pride overshadow reason? By naming the impulse, I often diffused it. Or if I felt compelled to brag about a recent success, I'd reflect, what does boasting serve? Am I that insecure that I must fish for applause? Let me step back. This self-governance is not burdensome or paranoid. It's a gentle stewardship of one's own psyche. After years, it became second nature, like glancing at a dashboard to ensure I'm within the speed limit. Now you might ask, did any crisis truly test your Stoic resolve? Indeed, some crises hammered me. An unexpected health scare in my family, a major project at work derailed by scandal, a painful betrayal by someone I considered a close ally. Each time, the Stoic pillars I'd built were tested. I won't pretend I glided through them without anguish, but I found a measure of composure that previously would have eluded me. I addressed the emergencies step by step, remembering Epictetus's counsel that we handle adversity by focusing on the immediate choices at hand. If it was a health crisis, I gave emotional support, got professional help, and reminded myself that ultimate outcomes might not be in my control. If it was betrayal, I allowed sadness, but refused to let bitterness poison my entire worldview. Each scenario validated the Stoic notion that while fortune can strike harshly, how we respond remains our domain. Reflecting on those crucibles, I see how Stoic practice truly is an armor of reason and virtue. Less about never feeling pain, and more about not letting pain dethrone your moral clarity. Yet I must stress, Stoicism is no magic cure. Even after a decade, I remain a work in progress. Sometimes I slip, maybe I lash out in momentary anger, or I catch myself craving recognition. The difference now is that such slips rarely entangle me for long. I recover faster, recognizing the moment for what it is, a departure from Stoic ideals. I hold no illusions of perfection, but I do carry confidence that with each misstep, I have the means to realign. That is the beauty of Stoicism as a living philosophy. It's a daily discipline that accepts human imperfection, yet continuously nudges us toward wisdom and virtue. Looking out into the broader world, political upheavals, cultural rifts, economic uncertainties, I see how Stoic principles can serve as a steady compass for entire communities. Imagine if more people learned to debate without demonizing opponents, anchored their sense of identity in reasoned convictions rather than partisan slogans, or cared for the common good beyond self-interest. We'd still have disagreements, but we might navigate them with more empathy and less hysteria. My own microcosm, my family, my immediate circles, has shown glimpses of this potential. As I shared Stoic insights with loved ones, we found a language for resolving conflicts more calmly, for respecting differences, and for remembering that we're all ephemeral travelers here. So why let strife devour our shared time? While I'm not naive about the complexity of global issues, I do hold hope that Stoic reason offers a constructive framework for bridging divides. Now, as I approach the end of this third part, let me summarize the practical flavor of these 10 Stoic lessons in action. To live stoically is not to renounce joy or success. It's to renounce the illusions that chain our happiness to external forces. It's about turning inward to cultivate rational reflection, moral consistency, and empathy, then expressing those qualities outward in relationships, work, community, and our own emotional self-regulation. The result, as I've experienced, is a life that feels integrated and purposeful, less vulnerable to whim or accident. We become, in a sense, our own anchor. At the same time, we remain open to collaborating with others from a place of respect rather than desperation or competitiveness. In the final segment, we will look ahead to the continuing evolution of Stoic thought in one's life journey, how to refine these lessons yet further, and how to impart them to others, whether that be children, mentees, or peers, so that Stoic wisdom doesn't end with us but ripples outward. For now, I leave you with an invitation. Reflect on some mundane irritations or dilemmas you've faced this very week. How might these Stoic principles, especially the recognition of what's in your control and the practice of reframing your judgments, alter your approach? Can you glean an opportunity to practice empathy or to pause before reacting to a perceived slight? If you can experiment with even one of these suggestions, you might glimpse the subtle power of Stoic living, the same power that has guided me these 10 years and remains a faithful companion through all manner of storms. Now, if any part of this message has been helpful to you, leave us your like and comment, helping the algorithm recommend it to someone who needs it at this time. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss new videos. And if you look through the videos we've already uploaded, you're sure to find something to take with you. Have a good day.